All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good morning, Malcolm. My name is Claudio, and I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studios in Fairfax City. We are very humble and grateful that Michael Franklin accepted our invitation to the show. Michael, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Let's go back to the beginning in your life. Were you born like in a musical family? How old were you when you perhaps began taking
Actually,
piano lessons?
my family wasn't musical, but I did have an uncle that sang country music on the radio.
Mhm.
I'm originally born in Buffalo, New York, which doesn't seem to be the type of place where country music would be popular on the radio. But
Yep.
My uncle did play music on the radio, but I never heard it, and I only met him a couple times, and he had no effect on my musical future. You know, my musical future probably started because I was a sickly little kid, and I had a very serious operation when I was 5 years old, and they put me out on a farm in East Aurora, New York, with my great grandparents who spoke no English.
Wow.
So there I was at between 5 and 6 years old, and I lived with my great grandparents on a farm. I learned a lot about farming at that time, but the thing that did work out is that they did have a piano there, and I started fooling around with the piano when I was 5 or 6 years old, and they had no television. They did listen to the radio, and at that time, I couldn't play with any kids because the operation was so serious that I had things attached to me, and I really couldn't go anyplace. So my parents would come. They gave me maps and globes and a chemistry set and that kind of stuff. And those are all the things that I got good at, traveling the world. And I studied to be a doctor, but I bailed, to do music. I was in the lab. I was in the cathedral playing the pipe organ more than in the lab doing experiments. So,
I know what you mean.
I started my first band. My dad was he was a Mr. Fix-It kind of guy, worked in a steel plant. And he made my first microphone with a reverse speaker from the ceiling. So with a string, the speaker hung from the ceiling and it sort of moved around and I could sing into the speaker.
Yep.
And he made the home stereo so I could plug my first guitar into the home stereo and sing through the microphone in my garage. And, the Beatles probably were where I started. The Beatles and the Ventures.
Gotcha. Yep. Perfect. What kind of, when you were like in high school, 15, 16, what kind of bands were you listening to? Was rock?
Well, I moved from Buffalo, New York to outside of Chicago in 1968, fall of 1968. And I'd already had bands in where I lived in Buffalo. In fact, one of my bands I had, we won a contest, a battle of the bands sort of contest. And I never played keyboards before. And they had a keyboard in the studio. I was just singing, and they made me play a solo on the keyboard. And from that record that we did was a band called The Movement.
Yep.
And the song was called Left Silently. We won a contest, and I had to become the keyboard player because I played this little 4 or 5 note solo on the keyboard. And from that, the band got pretty popular, and I got better and better. And when I moved to Chicago, outside of Chicago, in Indiana, rural Indiana, there was no bands there. So I immediately hooked up with a couple of people who could hardly play, and I started a band. And I had the first band in my city. And because it was the first band in the city, it was the only band in the city.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean, man. Yeah.
So I started playing the dances, and while the kids were off, doing their newspaper routes to make money, I was doing a concert every week at the YMCA or at the high school or at the VFW. And that's how I got into being a singer and keyboard player.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have great memories from Chicago. I went to when I arrived here in the United States, I went to school there, so I have great memories. It was very cold, though.
The funny thing that shows you how fate works. The only picture that I have from my original band when I moved to Indiana called GUM, Great Underground Music was the name of the band.
Gotcha.
And the only photo that I have is we are playing the debut of Inagata de Vida.
Oh, yeah.
This was 1969, sometime at the March 1969 at the Sadie Hawkins dance. And there's a picture of, and I'm playing bass at the time because I would do the intro to Inagata de Vida on an organ and then I'd play bass.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. Well, years later, I would join Iron Butterfly.
My God.
So 1969, I think 2001 or something like that. I joined Iron Bar with the last surviving members.
Yep. My God, man. Connected the dots, that was like a destiny, maybe, or not. I don't. Have you ever looked back now to where you started and then try to connect the dot? If you haven't had an operation, maybe you would have not learned to play the piano or live in a farm, and then things were as if somebody was pointed you in the right direction and connected the dot. And I mean, you have done so well financially in your life and groups and with music and videos and corporation that, I don't know.
Well, I don't think I really think that my life, or truthfully, I'm not being egotistical. It's not about the ego. It's just about destiny. Yeah. My life has gone through so many drastic changes.
Yeah.
From moves and thing when, and living in China for 15 years, which is at the end of the story. But, because I love the music so much and I was apt to jump in and learn this, because at 5 years old on a keyboard, that's the only thing I could do. So I had my bass in that, but, I couldn't carry a piano around. So then I got into the guitar. And it's fortunate that I learned how to play the guitar, because later on in life, watching guitar players' hands, I was always a jump ahead of everybody else, because I could see when I played with Chuck Berry, before he started the song, I knew what key we were going to be in. Wow. Oh, he's going to do Johnny Be Good in A flat. Oh my God, here we go.
Good for you, man. Good for you. That you started your first recording studio, I think it's called Futuresound.
My very first recording studio was called Futuresound. Yeah.
Feel free to elaborate on what band were you working with at the time? I think it's Danny and the Junior, Luke Christie.
Yeah, the very first bands I worked with were the band called, actually how I got into doing the oldies, which the old 50s and 60s music, which was really a great thing because it was very stylized. My first recording studio, I had Danny and the Juniors and the Drifters. And then a jazz group too. The people used to play with Ramsey Lewis, Eldee Young, and Red Holt.
Yep.
And they came in the studio and did some things. And I was a little bit into jazz, and then into the rock and roll. And my band would go in there, and instead of just playing like how a lot of people play with oldies bands, they would play their own version of an old song. I mean, my case in point is the song Shaboom by the Crows. Now, most people in the 50s, they know the song by the Diamonds, a very white version of the song. But when Danny and the Juniors came into the studio, they wanted to record Shaboom. We did it exactly like the Crows version. Very, very authentic. Early rock and roll was an extension of the big band era. The people who were playing rock and roll, like Bill Haley and the Comets, for instance, the kind of guitar and everything that played in that was not rock and roll yet. It was still the people from the big bands who were trying to make a living in this new thing called rock and roll. And so everything had a little bit of a jazz tint. Think of Rock Around the Clock for a bit. Everything was sort of swing with the string bass and the guitar solo, that very big band jazz. So we were into jazz. So when we played the rock and roll, we took that into account, and we wanted everything to be authentic. With that, we gained the respect of all these different people that we work with, because we would do it perfectly.
Wow.
You know. Yeah. And that was our thing. Okay, that's not the right sound for that song on the guitar. Yeah, he used this kind of guitar and that kind of amp, so you got to try to emulate that. So when you went on stage, you got that sound, and then the artist would turn around. Yeah, man. You know, like, hey, that sounds exactly like it. So we took pride in that, and with that, in the production of things, I always took that into account. You know, I was studying every kind of music. I had great teacher. And with that, you know, you not just do rock and roll, but you study classical, you study jazz, you study world music. I mean, I got my Grammy nomination for reggae, of all things. And I jumped right into reggae. I listened to reggae night and day for weeks before I got my first recording assignment, recording the very first reggae festival after Bob Marley died. And I got to record Rita Marley, the I Trees, Third World, Eka Mouse. I mean, everybody, Dennis Brown, Peter Tosh, everybody. I got to record all those guys. And it gave me a sort of a pride that nobody else is really understanding this kind of music, you know. I mean, in my world.
Right. Yeah.
So my journey through music has been like a heat-seeking missile. When I had an opportunity, I went there and jumped off the cliff and got into it, you know.
Maybe life is like that, Michael. Opportunities are there. Maybe, I hope, for everybody. Some people take it, run with it. Some people, they don't know what to do it, right? You knew what to do with it, right? So maybe,
well, you know what?
Right. Otherwise, from a kind of religion point of view, will be very unfair for some people complain, well, this country has been bad to me, or I didn't have a break as a musician, or I'm a piano player, nobody gave me a break. That will be unfair world, I think. And maybe the stuff was in front of people. Some people run with it like you did, I did. Some people didn't see it. I don't know what do you think?
A lot of people put up blinders about other kinds of music. It's just like some young guy. I went to Milton Nascimento concert, you know, here in Orlando, and I was in the line, and you know, everybody there is all Brazilian, and I know a couple of Brazilian musicians, and they say, "You like Milton Nascimento?" I said, I started singing, you know, one of the songs. I said, "Yeah, I've been into him forever since, you know, forever." Yeah. You know, why would I why? Because I'm a white guy. I'm an American. I can't respect that, you know. So a lot of people have, if something hits you, I mean, first off, I was into him because he played with Wayne Shorter. Yeah. And then John Anderson, who I work with, did songs with him. And what's her name? Esperanza Spalding recreated some of his songs, and I love the way she did them. It's like, okay, I've heard that song by 4 different artists. So, you know, and there he was on the stage. I mean, he's like in his 80s and you're singing. What a fantastic band. But I've never turned myself off to any kind of indigenous music, or, you know, when I was down in Argentina, I you know, listened to the tango, and, you know, I just jumped into it. When I was in China, I sort of got to be a little bit of an expert on Chinese music, you know. I mean, my wife's Chinese, and she's a piano player, and I would, you know, I'm doing a Chinese song right now for an artist, you know.
Good for you, man.
You know.
Yeah, I saw Milton Nascimento like a couple of months. So he was the same tour. He was playing here before he went to Florida. Very good guy. Very good. He's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing as somebody at, I don't know, 80 years old or whatever. He need to be carried to the stage, and somebody put him on the seat, and it's okay. Yeah. But the guy still has a great voice, and somebody.
I got to be friends with his son, and they invited me to come out to a concert in California. Actually, I invited John Anderson to come out, but John lives too far away from LA, just not logistically good. But you know, working with some people like John, you know, each thing has its story, of course, of how I got there. You know. Yeah. But, you know, as far as the things that are doing well for me now, which is like I'm on John's chapter 2.
Correct. Yeah.
Which I'm trying to finish this month because he's going out on the road in April. And so we're communicating daily. I just sent him a shopping list of things I needed him to sing. So,
Good for you. Yeah. Yeah.
So normally the process is we work telephonically and over the internet for an interim, and then we will finally get together and put in the final pieces and do the final mixes and, whatever. But, I'm sort of the cruise director and casting director,
How you manage? I mean, there are early in the beginning of your career, you mentioned something very important. Are all the musicians receptive for you are a producer, you're contacting people, you hire me to do an album. I want to do the best for you, but our musicians say, no, I don't want the guitar. I want the guitar to be like this or nothing, as opposed to, well, you invite three guys, three-string guitar, and all of a sudden one of the string musicians plays something great, and you say, man, that would sound great. Are the musicians receptive to that? To do the, they are fixed on an idea to.
I taught a class at Full Sail, the recording school here. I taught a class here called, producer from soup to nuts. And I had different examples of all the different ways it is to be a producer. Either you're just taking somebody's music and you're mixing it.
Yeah.
Or you're getting down with the artist and you help them, formulate their songs and perfect their songs. Or you're basically found an artist yourself and you're you see what they could do and you put together the whole thing for them and you do it with them. I mean, there's different variations of that formula, but I've done it all with famous artists where, I'm helping a famous artist right now put together songs. They've never written songs before. They've just been a singer, and it depends on what they think you can do for them. If they say, you've done it before, you've been successful at it, guide me. Or you get into the situation where, no, I like this. And you think, man, I'm giving you my advice. I don't think that's good. This would be better.
Gotcha.
Sometimes musicians don't realize how much they're losing by their idea. And they're a famous musician and I'm just a producer, right? And they've got a style and they've got fans. And you have to tell them, I don't get that. I think you're shooting yourself in the foot. It has to be this way. Well, why? Well, me and my whole team, and I have a team, engineer, musicians, everybody that's involved with me, and they give me their opinions because to me, I'm a consensus guy. I'm not like a producer that says it's my way or the highway. I'm sort of like the decider. They all give me their input and it brews. And I don't do things fast. It takes me a long time to do a record because I want to do it right. And nowadays with the way vinyl is, it takes 10 months to get an album. So nobody's really in a hurry. You're planning a year ahead. I'm doing 5 albums right now. And some of them I don't think I'll see for 2 years, in the marketplace.
Gotcha.
So it's all apples and oranges, but I'm not trying to dominate an artist. I want to be their friend. I want to be their collaborator. I want to understand what they want to do. But when I think that they're going down the wrong path, I want to be able to tell them. I don't want to be like, I work with 2 different really famous guys. I work with Wolfman Jack, where I worked with them like this.
Yep.
Respected my opinion, and we were fine. If I screwed up, he'd take me over to the side and tell me I screwed up. But then I work with Dick Clark. And Dick Clark was like this, and I pulled him aside one time actually and told him, man, you're not getting the best out of me because you're telling me what to do and you're not, asking my opinion. And that changed. You got those dichotomies where you want to work with somebody in collaboration and make it right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, do I think I know everything? No, but when you're working in consensus with really great people, you get the vibe of you're going down the right road. And let's say, for instance, Robbie Steinhardt's album. That was an acclaimed success. Robbie actually came in and played on the John Anderson 1,000 Hands.
The first one, yeah.
The first one. And then, I didn't know if I'd like the guy because he was kind of a curmudgeon, he was like very grumpy. And then we got to be friends. And then he would come over. His drive from Tampa is about an hour and a half, 2 hours. He would come over every couple of weeks, and we would get together for dinner or something. And then I decided, hey, look, I had this one song that I was going to do with John and Billy that I wrote, and Billy Cobham played on it for the John session.
Wow.
And then I asked Robbie to play on it, and then Robbie played on it. And then that brewed up the idea of Not in Kansas Anymore. And then, just a couple weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months later, hey, Robbie, you want to do a record? Nah, I don't want to do a record. Really? And we started talking about it, and then he came up with some ideas, and then my brother and I got together. Next thing you know, that song, which is called Climb to Grace, was the first song that I did, and he was very proud of it. He was very proud that he played with Billy Cobham, and then I took him to a Billy Cobham concert, and him and Billy got to meet, and then it was like, all right, man, let's do this record. And it was his swan song, he lived long enough to, we finished the record, we listened to the final mixes, I sent everything off, and we planned the tour. And unfortunately, just prior to his 71st birthday, he had pancreatitis and passed away in July.
Yeah, wow, unbelievable. Yeah, we'll talk about that album in more detail in a couple of minutes. In 1984, you recorded your first solo jazz. I think it's called Jazz Vein, if I remember.
Jazz Vein. Wow, you know your stuff. In fact, I'm going to recreate one of those tunes on a new album I'm doing.
Really?
Yeah. One song on Jazz Vein is called Honey Butter, which I recorded with Chuck Leavell from the Rolling Stones, who's a good friend of mine.
Wow. On
that album. Yeah. And I redid that song when I was in Japan, I reformulated it, and it's called Shinkansen, like the fast bullet train.
Yeah.
And that song's got Tower Power.
Wow.
And Billy Cobham on it.
My God.
And the song was there, but that version sort of morphed into a brand new song. And that'll be on, my brother and I are releasing an album in January called Anahata, which means the color of sound. And that album will be out with that song will be on it. It's now called Shinkansen. And it's got, like say, Larry Coryell, Tower of Power, Billy Cobham, Charlie DeChant, a couple, great people on that album. And another song, which is called Indigo from Jazz Vein, which I got the chance to meet my hero, which was McCoy Tyner, and I met McCoy at the White House. Anyway, I did a song on my first album called McCoy, Indigo. And I'm recreating that song for a new album I'm doing with famous drummer, jazz drummer Rayford Griffin, who plays with John Luke Ponty and played on the John Anderson tour. Rayford's a fantastic guy, impeccable drummer, and I just feel compelled to do an album with him.
Ray's a good friend. I interviewed him as well. I'm a big time Jean-Luc Ponty fan. I interviewed Jean-Luc as well. I'm going to be interviewing his daughter in the near future. And during the last tour of Jean-Luc Ponty, I interviewed all of them, the four of them. So I'm very happy. Ray's a very nice guy. I have met musicians that are not that great. Hey, I have met engineers that I'm a computer scientist that are not that great, but Ray's a very nice and down to earth, and he's a very good guy, man. I really like it. Yeah, he's
we went. I was in California like 2 weeks ago, and we went and saw Corey Wong, the young new guitar player, who I'm putting on a track.
Yeah, I need to check him out. Yeah, I don't know him. Yeah.
Oh yeah, his style is sort of like super funk, but with like he's going to be playing on a song with a big band called the Superstar Horn Section, which is like 6 horns, like super sax, which is the son of Joey D and the Starlighters.
Yeah.
Right, Peppermint Twist. His son Ronnie is one of the best musicians I know. He's got a band called the Superstars, and great horn section.
Good, good. That's great. In '84, you got like maybe a lucky break or something important in your life or magic in your life. You end up meeting Wolfman Jack, and feel free to elaborate what.
Yeah, well, I was playing in a theater called the Holiday Star Theater in Maryville, Indiana.
Yeah.
And we sort of became the house band there. My brother and I in our band, and we would play with the stars that come in that didn't have bands. The people were just like singers, didn't have bands, and we would go in and play. Well, one of the shows is Wolfman was the host, and he just really noticed us. And then we started doing some shows with him, and I got to be good friends with him. And then years later, when we moved to Florida to open up a club called Little Darlin's Rock and Roll Palace, and we were doing television there, I actually went to the TV people as music director and conductor, and I told them, we had a host on the show who dressed up in a tuxedo and didn't really have any rock and roll credibility. And I said, I can get you Wolfman Jack for the show. And really? So I got Wolfman Jack as the host on the show. That bonded us even more. And then maybe 4 or 5 years later, we changed the name of the theater to Wolfman Jack's Rock and Roll Palace. And then he became the mainstay until he passed away.
Yeah. Wow. Is the place still open under a different name? Or?
No. It's been closed. In fact, they knocked it down. It was a brand new building too. Opened up in 1986 and was knocked down in like 1994. Replaced with a go-kart track. Well, it's Florida,
Yeah, well.
That's all I can say.
Plus a lot of...
Well, Wolfman was a great guy, and we were just talking the other day. I had dinner with the famous singer Lou Christie. Lightning striking again. I had dinner with Lou a couple nights ago in New York. He's one of my favorite guys. And we were talking about Wolfman. And, what we would have done if Wolfman had lived. He would be the host of hosts. Life would be different because we were both great friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Hey, by the way, if you are in town close to DC, let me know. My wife she's from Colombia and I'm from Chile. As you say, she's one of the best chefs in the world, man. According to me, you're free to come to the house with your wife when you are in town. And
my son lives very close to Washington, D.C.
Where?
My third son, he lives in York, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, not that far, like a couple hours from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went to Washington last year for Christmas, and we spent Christmas in Washington with him and his wife.
Do you like it, this area? Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C.?
Oh, yeah, very. I played some around there. I played there, Lancaster, the folk festival with Iron Butterfly. And, I played a lot of the venues with John around Maryland. I can't remember the places we played, but with 1,000 Hands. But it's nice. I have a friend that lives in New Jersey, and it's that same kind of area where it's old colonial America, a lot of old stone homes and, rolling hills. And I have a daughter that lives in Virginia. She lives in Amelia Courthouse. Amelia Courthouse is right in the center of Virginia.
Yeah, I need to see where. Which city she lives? Or?
Amelia Courthouse, Virginia.
Oh, that's it. Oh, I thought that. I need to check it out. No idea what that is. Yeah. I live close to Reston. Virginia, North Virginia, like I don't know, 20 minutes from DC. 25 minutes from the White House. So
she's about maybe an hour from DC.
An hour from me. Yeah.
Down south.
Yeah. Good, man. In the 90s, you began producing for cartoons such as the Felix the Cat, Hello Kitty, Walking with Your Own Studio, and then you end up producing Tommy Rowe, Gloria Gaynor, Spencer Davis, Edgar Winter, and Bobby Kimball. Wow, man.
Well, a lot of that's due to a friend of mine named Don Oriolo. Don is a producer himself, a musician and artist. His father was Joe Oriolo, the guy who drew the Popeye cartoons and the Felix the Cat cartoons and the Amazing Hercules and Chiquita Banana. He was the artist that drew those. Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Yeah.
So Joe Oriola was the artist that drew all that stuff. And his son, Don, was a musician and producer, and actually in the 80s turned Felix the Cat, which was a dying entity, into a global brand in Japan, Europe. Felix got to be a very, very big brand worldwide. And I was producing an album for the singer Melanie. You know, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. Anyway, I was producing an album with her, and her husband had known Don. And then I traveled to England with my brother to do a concert where I performed with Rick Wakeman. My brother and I performed with Rick Wakeman. We did a tour. The Korg Synthesizer Company hired me to do a European tour. Show off the synthesizers in all the different capitals and all the music stores. And the first tour I went over, I met a bunch of English guys, and they invited me back for the British Music Fair. So I came back and played the British Music Fair, and one of the things was I was going to play with Rick Wakeman. So I brought my brother along with me, and we rehearsed with Rick, and we did the Six Wives of Henry VIII, all the stuff. And anyway, we got to be friends, and he invited us to come to his house in Camberley, and we stayed friends for a while. And he wanted to do an album, recreate Journey to the Center of the Earth. So I went over to the next year to his new house, which was on the Isle of Man, and worked with him a little bit there, and then brought the tapes back to the United States, and put my band on it and produced it in Philadelphia at I can't remember the name of the studio, but I produced it there in Orlando at Full Sail, and that became Classic Tracks. The funny thing is the day I played Ronnie Scott's in London with Rick and my brother, a character named Brian Chatton, who is a piano player, songwriter, had worked with John Anderson in his first band, The Warriors. He worked with Phil Collins in Phil Collins' first band called Flaming Youth. He went on to play with Sheena Easton, the Hollies, a bunch of other people. Brian's a good friend of mine. He said, "Hey, do you want to meet John Anderson? This is where in Ronnie Scott's rehearsing." And I said, "Sure." So we went down the street, and John was there. First time I met him in a pub called the Admiral. And so we met him, and that was our first meeting. And it was like in 1980. Oh, wow, long time ago, 1980.
Yeah, 40 years
and
ago.
So, I mean, we kept up a little bit of relationship. Brian had written songs with John, which were the predecessor of Chapter One. So in the 90s, when Yes went out to do their 90120 thing, Brian asked me to orchestrate 4 songs that he'd written for John. So I did. And then I went to meet with John about doing this record. And then life happened. John was on the road with Yes. I was doing Wolfman Jack, and playing tours and the nightclub and television show. And it was so far away from being finished. About, I can't remember, 2015, I think, I was playing the Bakersfield Music Festival with Iron Butterfly. And I realized John didn't live too far away from there. And my wife is Chinese. She had never seen California. So I said, look, we're going to go out and play this concert. We're going to take a week off and just drive up and down the coast of California, go to Napa Valley, see some friends in Los Angeles. She's excited. So we go out to Bakersfield. It's hilarious because the first night I get there, on one stage is all my oldies friends, all the guys I played with for 20 years in the oldies field.
Yeah.
And I see that they're rehearsing. So I walk over to that stage and I sit down next to Shirley Austin Reeves, the lead singer of the Shirelles. Now, I haven't seen Shirley in 20 years because I've been in China and Japan. And I'm sitting right next to her, and she looks over at me, stone cold face, and says, "Hi, Michael. What are you doing?" I mean, I got to tell you, my hair used to be black, and now my hair is white and hardly any there. But she recognized me immediately. But I saw all my friends there, that were playing Fabian and the Drifters and different people like that. But then I played with Iron Butterfly the next day, and afterwards, I called John and we went and met, and we started talking about, the project that we'd worked on a long time ago. He's, man, I forgot all about that. I said, what? He said, I got the tapes in my basement. I said, well, why don't you get the tapes out and see what they sound like, right? So he sent me the tapes. Couldn't hear them because if I would have put them on a 2-inch machine, they would probably just disintegrate it. They're, 30 years old. So I had them baked at a place in New Jersey, and they sent them back to me. They did the digital up there. They did the digital transfer. And I got it and I said, my God, it still sounds great, except for like the synthesizers were very dated. So my idea was, I told him, look, I'm going to do this with real instruments, because real instruments don't date. A Korg M1, sound 101, can't forget it. I know it's a Korg M1, sound 101. I don't ever want to hear it again. But a real grand piano, that will suffice forever. So I started working on it, and I sent him the very first rush of one of the songs, and he said, wow, nice guitar. I said, Larry Coryell, who I was producing at the time. So Larry came in and played, oh yeah, man, that's cool. He played on that song, and then played on a song that I wrote for my mother. And so Larry played on it, and then Ian Anderson, yeah. Hey, do you know a good flute player? That's supposed to be a joke, but I'm pumped.
Okay.
All right. So Ian played flute on it, and it started like that. More and more and more people started, and I found a song, and I'd say, who would best fit that song? And there you go. I would just try to find people to fit the whole package, and then 1,000 Hands was born.
I got you. Wow, unbelievable. How you, from a producer point of view, let's say, let me make something up. You're doing an album from Johnny, any Johnny. Let me take this out, and then it's going to be 10 tracks, right? And you have a Rolodex, used to be a Rolodex or a computer, and your phone list of 100 musicians. How can you tell that, hey, from a drummer could be Danny Govlitz, can be Paul Vertigo, can be Simon Phillips, can be any. How you're able to determine and put together 4 or 5 guys to one particular track, and then you decide, well, I think from track 3, I want to switch that particular player, that drummer, and get another guitarist because the rhythm is different. And
I hear it.
How
I just hear it. I mean,
from a mathematical, I'm an engineer, I'm a computer scientist. From a mathematical point of view, there's no way somebody can make the decision out of 50 drummers that you have, 50 guitarists that you have, 50 bass player, to say that guy with that guy, that with that guy. It's a probabilistic, it's a combination, factorial thing. That
I just hear it. I mean, I'll tell you what, it's like, okay, what kind of drums would fit on that? Oh, well, I mean, I'm very aware of the different styles of the different people that I like. Let's say, for instance, I was at the Halloween Festival in October. That's sponsored by the String Cheese Incident. I don't know if you know who the String Cheese Incident is.
No.
Well, they're a band that have millions and millions and millions of followers. Now, I was turned on to that by my assistant, who's a younger guy, and I happen to know the father of one of the guys that is in the String Cheese Incident. He's a percussionist. Now, I've heard him. It's sort of like a bluegrass band. But they play all these, these festivals where it's like jam music, like Fish and Grateful Dead. And they're one of those bands that they're very, very good musicians, and they'll take like Birdland by Weather Report. They open up with Birdland by Weather Report, bluegrass.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
picture that.
Right. So anyway, you look at hear a band, and then you say, in my list of songs, oh, I know the perfect song for them to do. in my world. So they're doing one song now. Or on that festival, I saw this young guitar player, Corey Wong, who I told you about. And he played, and he has got a 7-piece horn band. So I've got a song that's got Tower of Power on it. And my assistant showed him the record. He said, "Oh, man, yeah, we Tower of Power. Well, you can play on this. It fits his style." I'm not looking for somebody to do something that's not what they do. I'm looking for something, okay, God, I hear he's the guy in that. He's the guitar player on that song. I saw Joe Bonamassa on the internet playing Heart of the Sunrise by John. So I called up a mutual friend. I have a famous cellist, a friend of mine named Tina Gao, who I know works with Joe. And then she got a hold of Joe for me. Joe called me. He was be delighted to play in a track. I sent him a track of John's, and he did an amazing job on it. It's just I could hear he's the guy for that thing. What he's going to do, how he plays, and now I'm putting a B3 player on that song, who will make it more defined of what I sort of hear. It's like I can't tell you that this song here, when it starts out, where it's going to end. Some songs like Ramalama, John just sent me some vocals, and then his story, which is true, that he tells everybody, is I got the song before I left for China in the email, just the vocals, and I put it into my computer, and in the lounge in Orlando, I started working on it. I had like a 2-hour delay, and I got on the plane. I loved it so much I couldn't stop. I stayed up 14 hours working on the song. When I landed in Hong Kong, I sent him back the song, and the song is virtually finished. I just put real violin on it, and instead of my computer violin, and then I put 3 drummers on it: Matt Brown, Carmen Apiece, and an electronic drummer. And the song is exactly what it was. That song, came together like that. So it's sort of apples and oranges. Any given song has sort of a story to it, but a lot of it is I hear what musician would be best on it. And the idea 1,000 Hands is it's, John Anderson collaboration with everybody. Who could you see him collaborating with? Well, everybody said, man, I've seen Yes collaborate with Mahavishnu. That was the input to get Billy to play and stuff. And now I don't know how many songs I've done with Billy. Billy's doing 2 songs on my new album and another song on another album for me. And he's just a wonderful guy. I just like the guy so much. And he's still the innovator.
Wow. Joe Bonamassa is unbelievable guy. I have seen him many times when he comes here. And I was in London again. I went twice this year to London to see the last 3 shows of Genesis. And then I saw Bonamassa 2 days after Eric Clapton and so forth at the Royal Hall. He's an unbelievable guy. I mean, unbelievable. But so you call Joe Bonamassa, right? And then that guy's not available because he's on tour, sick, whatever. He's not available for another month. So how do you do in the meantime? Are you in your head from a producer, you say, well, I want to bring John instead of Joe, and because I need to wait for Joe another month, and that means
some of it is. I'll tell you what. Some of it is. I think about who would be best on a track.
Yeah.
And if it works out, I mean, I look up first off. I don't. I want to put Tower of Power on a track, and I look it up, and they're in Europe. Well, that's not going to work. But I mean, fortunately for me, I was thinking about putting Tower of Power on a couple of tracks, and they were coming to Orlando in 2 months. So I had them do it here in my studio, which I prefer,
Right.
I mean, Billy's done tracks for me. Billy Cobham's done tracks for me, where he lives in Panama. But I prefer to do him here. When he comes here, my engineer, Matt Brown, is a great drummer and a great engineer. And we have, I don't know how many drum sets we've got here. And we got 20-something snares.
Yeah. Wow.
But when Billy came here, Matt had the drums all set up and all set them up perfectly, and even had done the sound check, to make them sound like Billy Cobham drums. And He's got the Billy Cobham drum collection in the computer, so he can hear them. Right?
Yeah.
Billy came in, he moved one drum. It was like he was amazed. But The drums on those tracks sound fantastic.
Yeah.
When he does it someplace else, I have to deal with how they did it in the studio and whatever. But I look on the calendar. If somebody's coming to town and they fit the bill, then I contact them. Otherwise it's like who's gonna. I'm working on a song right now. I can't say because it's not locked down. But I met with somebody the other night and they're very interested in playing on it, and I had to think of myself, what song? No, you know what? That song, they wouldn't sound like them. You got to have a song that sounds like them, because if you put a famous artist on a record and it doesn't sound like them, what was the value of it? They're just another studio musician, and the punter, the listener, doesn't get the extra experience of those completists who love their artists. There's a certain passion you get to when you sit down and, for me, when I listen to a Chick Corea song, because I knew Chick Corea and I, whatever, and I get a certain, feeling for when I hear Chick play. I have a certain feeling when I hear people playing like Chick, So a lot of people don't consider that these musicians really have styles, but to me, they're so defined. And when I'm listening to something that, okay, great, Rick Wakeman played on a track, and it's so Rick Wakeman, maybe he can't help himself but be Rick Wakeman, it's like, okay, that's Rick Wakeman. I don't have to do nothing to that, But some people are trying to be innovative when they're giving you a piece, and it's like, man, it doesn't sound anything like you, different guitar, different amp, different whatever, and you deal with it. You credit them, but I don't think the punter gets as much enjoyment out of it. When you've reached a musical identity, you're there. When you play any song and it sounds like you. For instance, I mastered 1,000 Hands with Bernie Grugman in California, right? Who's the master of masterers, right? He's done everybody, all my favorite artists, Joni Mitchell, Chick Corea. He's done them, everybody. When he sits down to master the John Anderson thing, the first track I had him do at the time was Activate. And so he's in there working on the song, and wow, sounds like Larry Coryell. I said, it is. Well, wow. Man, that sounds like Ian Anderson. It is. That sounds like John Luke Ponty. Yeah, it is. So the good thing about that was I think he was a little grumpy when he came in that day. Sorry, Bernie. He was a little grumpy when he came in that day. And after we did my record, he loved it. He really loved it. In fact, he did a thing on video for me about how much he loved the record. And then he canceled his next meeting with somebody to go out and have coffee with me.
Good for you, man.
We're talking about, some of my favorite artists and whatever. And he was giving me his feedback about, recording with Joni Mitchell and all these people. It's like,
wow.
It's the same thing. You're enamored by an artist. The artist gets into your system and you love that place. And when they all come together, 1,000 Hands was the idea of, how would Mahavishnu sound with Yes? How would Weather Report sound with Yes? How would Yes sound with what? Because John's the voice of Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes can go out and do whatever they want to do. Steve, he's a great guitar player, and he has the right to be Yes, but he's the only guy in Yes now.
Yeah.
And it's easy for a singer to be that band. And I think that's the way, John's going, and he should, because he is the voice and the innovator of Yes. I've worked with him. I know how he works, and he is Yes. Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay. I a couple of weeks ago, I saw the Steve Howe version of Yes, right? They call, and it's not Yes, right? But it's pretty good. I know when I buy the ticket, I know Yes. I know Steve Howe is going to be, he's playing with a lot of great musicians, and it's fine.
No, they're all fine musicians. It's not that. It's just that it's I think when you go to a band and you got two or three of the original people, when you get down to one, and I don't dismiss Yes in any way, because I love Yes music, and there's a lot of people out there to devout. The idea that they're still out there doing it at Steve's age is a testament to Steve.
Absolutely.
So I'm not into that, because I work with John, people are always trying to get me to diss Yes, and I won't. I mean, I think they're all really nice people. I've met, some of them, and they're all really nice people.
Sure.
And the fans love it. The duration of the tour is testament to that people like that music. And always trying to put me against the guys. I mean, I've worked with Patrick Moraz and I've worked with Rick Wakeman. I have pictures of me and Patrick Moraz playing and Rick Wakeman playing the same piano. I invited them both here for a charity, which should have been like, gasoline on a fire, but it wasn't. They never really even met each other.
Really?
Yeah. They never, Rick was out of the band before Patrick joined the band, and then Patrick left the band before Rick joined the band again. They were inconsequential to each other in a way, but, they just, now I took a picture of them not too long ago together, it's whatever,
That's beautiful.
Bands are bands,
No, absolutely. When you have like let me make something up. You have like you want to do a new record, right? For John Anderson, let's say that, you have a budget of whatever, 100 grand, right? So the hourly fee for Joe Bonamassa in 2 tracks is that much. For the local guys, that much. And you do like the math at the beginning to see how long or how much would it take to put a record together, to try to make, as I say, my hypothetical number is 100 grand to do a vinyl, and maybe you will record that investment or not, or you don't have a budget to begin with, and you say, well, I want that guy to play in track 1, that guy to be in track 3, and some are more expensive than others, right? The hourly rate of somebody, or you're kind of trading favors with people.
Yes, I know where you're going. It's all apples and oranges again. It's first off, I finance everything myself.
Right.
The thing about it is that if I sit down and say, okay, look, I'm going to do this album. How much is it going to cost me to do it? Is there a market out there? And sometimes for me, if it's a break-even proposition, I may do it for the enjoyment of it, the camaraderie of it. Some of the things that I do, like Robbie's album, with a lot of stuff I wanted to get off my musical chest. The album, though Robbie played on it, for 3 or 4 of the songs were written by my brother. The rest of them were basically written by me, and Robbie had his input, but I credited him on all the songs because I wanted him to do the record. And I wanted to show him that Jim Morrison gave all the guys in his band the credit. They didn't squander it all. I didn't want to squander it all. I wanted the guy, my friend, to do a record. So here, I'm giving you, I want your input, and you're part writer on these songs. So it's Franklin Steinhardt Franklin. You're 1/3 of writing everything. He'd give me ideas. He would sit down with his violin and play something and say, okay, I'm going to try to incorporate that in there. But when you're talking about famous artists, some artists, and I can't name it because some people want money. Some people don't want money. Some people want just their expenses to be paid to come and record. Some people just want the studio to be paid. They'll give you their time. Some of my artists require a little bit of money. 1 or 2 that I've recorded a little bit disappointed because they wanted more money than I should have given them. And some I'm surprised they even want any money at all because they're well-to-do. But probably that's why they're well-to-do, But a lot of people did it for free. I don't want to cast some of the most famous ones. If they want to play on it, they're going to play on it. And if you send them a song, I might send an artist 2 songs. I hear you playing on this and I hear you playing this. You can do either one or both. I hear you playing acoustic guitar on this one in this section. I hear you playing this kind of line from the sort of tone that you had on that song on that album that you did, right? And with that in mind, I only got to play a solo there, right? I mean, Steve Morris didn't have to play through the whole song of Climb to Grace. He only had to play on two phrases of solo. He actually played on 3, but then Tommy Calton and Jim Gentry had one good chorus that was just I had to use. So Steve got 2, Tommy got 1, and Jim got 1. I got the best of what I had. I had this whole palette of colors, and I just put together what I thought would be right. And if I like it, then I just got to look around to my engineer and my other guys. For instance, the song Climb to Grace with Billy. There was a part, we call it a Steve Gadd kind of part, where the rhythm is happening and the drums are playing around that. Bop, bop, right. It's sort of like there's a little bit of a disjunct solo with rhythms, and the drummer's playing solos to accent those rhythms. So Billy's in the studio, and after he got done with the one song, he goes, "Okay, anything else you got for me?" I said, "Here, there's another song. It's very simple, Billy. It's right up your alley. There's a 4/4 violin section, and I'm in the other side of the window. 4/4 violin section, and it goes into a 7/4 rhythm, which sounds sort of like a Mahavishnu thing. Sorry, bud. So anyway, so he starts playing, and I conduct the thing, and then where the violins end, and he hears the rhythm, and he plays. And I tell him, I'm going to cut you off when the next part comes in. And he stops. Next part that starts up is this thing where my brother was going to do a bass solo, but Billy in his head, it's like a Steve Gadd thing. Okay, great. So he starts playing, right? So he starts playing the solo, right? And my brother's standing next to me, and he goes, "Isn't that where my solo is supposed to be?" I said, "Shut the hell up, man. It's Billy Cobham." So Billy played the song all the way through, and at the very end, it started decrescendo in tempo, and Billy played it all the way to the end. So after a little bit of wait, he goes, "Okay, I'm ready to do it." And I walked out in the studio, and I gave him a hug. I said, "No, man, that's it." "Really?" I said, "Yeah, that was it. One take."
Wow.
So it's not like a moment you could get some things that we did, like you might do a couple takes, but that was the take, and that's the take that's on the record.
Yeah. Wow. Unbelievable with one take, man. And then what's the process in your head to, you expect X number of dollars to kind of record that investment? For example, right? I like I told you at the beginning, I see so many shows here in Virginia, and the bands, at the end of the day, they're recording their investment. Well, not a lot of people buy vinyl, but not everybody, right? So they end up recording their investment by selling T-shirts and signed CDs or signed vinyl or a poster.
Well,
as if you're doing a record
on,
and you record their investment to merchandise, right?
It's not the same sort of template every time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm as far as the album and the tour, 1,000 Hands, I was a producer of both the album and the tour. But sometimes if you did an album and then the tour is not with, it's different. So yeah, and on the tour, we were making money, of course, doing the concert and T-shirts and selling, merchandise on the tour. And then, of course, the album, selling the album. But as far as I'm trying to make a work of art, I just turned 70. I'm fine. To me, it's all about the art now. I mean, I can't shoot myself in the foot bad enough to be impoverished. So yeah. I'm doing several albums. I'm not really worried about the cost of it. The record company's doing very well. It's getting a good exposure in the world. People who know about prog rock go to solarmusic.com, and I'm selling every day. It's not billions of dollars, but it pays the bills, and
That's good for
it
you.
pays enough to say, okay, I'm going to keep doing this thing. And